Welcome back to the studio. This is my workshop. You've clicked this channel, which means that we're going to show you something about the jewelry industry, something about the trade. My name is Jaco. I've been around for many years doing this, and behind the camera is Damia. Welcome to today's video. Making jewelry is you get this very special job which deals with very special moments in other people's lives, and you get the opportunity to be a part of it, right? So that's special to start off with. In this particular case, it's even so much more special because I'm making a ring for my son. It's a beautiful sapphire and 2 diamonds, and we're going to be setting these in platinum. The gallery settings are very traditional. When I say traditional, technically these things have been around for many years. They're so available just to buy. We like making things in this workshop, and also it's I can be assured that the setting size is going to be exactly right because I'm making them for the stones that have been set today. I'm going to start the setting off with a design. The design doesn't have to be exact, but the more realistic you get it, the better the understanding that you have with regards to building the ring itself. You'll know what you want from here onwards. Now we're going to execute it. For myself, I start from the middle stone because I can work away from that middle section and I can make sure that everything is in balance. We're going to create a little tube, like a cone-shaped tube. The diameter of the stone needs to be able to seat itself inside the actual cone. You can't have it overhanging too much. It needs to be right on the edge of the center of the tube itself. I'm looking at the sapphire and I'm actually comparing it to my tapering block, and I'm looking at it imagining now where the stone would sit if they had to be metal. So it's not the same size as the stone, but I'm also putting it into an area where if there had to be metal around it, that would be enough to sort of create the claws. I'm working with the sapphire alone to start off with, and then from here onwards we can work towards the next 2 stones. So I've created the tube for the center stone and I've created the tubes for the side stones. These are like blank canvases. We've got something that will hold the stone at an angle, and we can now decorate and excavate whatever shape we want out of those. There's a decorative element to them, and all the jewelry, which is what this style is based on, was all about that decoration. It was all about that extra little bit of decoration on the sides. I'm busy preparing those tubes. I know the height, the top part is correct. I'm going to start excavating the little rounded parts. They're the easiest to do. So if I'm going 6 points over here, I'm taking that first point, moving it about 1 millimeter on, making another mark, and then all the way next to it round, I cut the 2 areas which I want to leave for the claw. I mark a height from the top around the actual tube, and I know that's where I'm going to stop. This is one of the methods that I use of pre-cutting the size of the claws, and then completely leaving them alone and only working with the areas between that. Symmetry in these things is absolutely everything. And if you're looking back at the old style of jewelry and how that was made, that's the part that you can really respect, especially because people were making those things by hand. You could use a diamond phrase, you can use barrel phrase, ball phrases, whatever it is that you need to use to get this particular result. The main thing that I could say is that our tools move in a direction, so be careful to start jumping in with the exact right size. Start with smaller bits and then enlarge it cautiously so that you don't feel that everything twists a little bit, because that's what the motion will do. You'll have to fight it. Suppose a file or something like that, to end up with a file is your safest method because it's not going to have a direction other than forward. Now we're going to start taking those top part of the settings and tracing them down to the bottom. Once I've got that pattern down and I'm happy with it, I can now draw that little curtain section. When you turn it around and we start coming in from the bottom, that line tells us exactly where we need to be. Don't go further than that. These little settings, that's the main part of this ring. That's the decoration of it. It needs to be right. So what I'm trying to say is we need to spend time doing these, refine them, don't rush them. So I'm creating this little area for these settings to be displayed on, if I can put it that way. So I'm creating the roundness of the diameter, and then I'm creating the little circles, and I'm piercing all of that out. It's just easier for me in this particular case, and it's almost like a plinth that it stands on in a way. It's funny to explain this, but that's exactly how I'm seeing it. It's practical purpose, obviously, to meet the finger. So I need to have it a certain thickness, make sure that everything is nice and stable. Now I can put these two parts together. If you see what I'm doing, I'm using teeny tiny little pieces of solder, and because I've fused it, I'm going to be using hard solder in this case. The holes that I've got that finalize the whole idea of this as being one piece, as three settings as one. Those little holes from the bottom are always drilled afterwards. If you drill these beforehand, something could go wrong, and then you've got the whole diameter being completely out. So create the whole thing. And then once you've got the luxury of holding it in your hand, sit and make a little tiny hole and enlarge that, making sure that your diameter stays in the center. You can manipulate this. You start with a small ball phrase and then maybe start bringing it a little lower if you find that you've moved that way. Pull it a little this way until you get to a point where it's pretty much straightforward, and then use your final ball phrase just to go right through it. If you don't have a ring, the settings will just fall with your fingers. We have to make a shank now. Come on. How many times have I tried putting that in?
I know, and and it never makes its way in. Have you noticed that?
A couple of steps involved here. I'm going to cast it. I'm going to roll it. I'm going to create a ring. The thickness of the ring and the width of the ring, I'm considering to what I want at the bottom, but I'm keeping it thick enough so that I can hammer it. In my case, I'm hammering it. There's many ways of doing it, but I really enjoy hammering it. So I'm respecting this bottom section over here. Like I said, that's why I made it that wide, and I'm hammering the top into a knife edge section, which also extends it towards the top. I've got settings that are quite high, and I need this shank to come up and meet the settings so that the ring has balance. Getting quite fond of this idea of cutting them out. In this case here, I've got this really lovely pliers from Lindstrom, and this very, very detailed little jaw, and they're quite strong. So I'm bringing the jaw in, and I'm actually bending them up, in this case, to create a sort of like a curve towards the settings themselves. And then with that bend, because it's one solid thing, I'm coming in with a file on the inside and I'm rounding the top. So we're decorating parts which are very necessary for the ring itself to be structurally strong, but we're decorating them because this is a ring. You know, we want to make it pretty. I'm bringing those two parts together. I should also mention that the shank itself, I do like to finish off most of it. Think about it this way. If you've got this part pre-finished and this part pre-finished and you bring them together, wherever they meet is really the only place where you have to attend to that preserves the detail that you've just sweated over for so many days or hours. I bring them together and I join them. I like to solder them together working with platinum. I'll definitely melt the 18 karat. Remember, the solder melts at a certain melting point to accommodate the metal that you're working with. If I'm going to be working with platinum solder, the solder actually melts at a higher melting point than the gold. So we're going to be joining it with the hardest gold solder. Polish it up, set the stones, time to let it go. Making an engagement ring is one of the most special things that you can be able to do. It's right up there with using some gold from another generation to give something towards a new generation. It's like we make things that have really got meaning in people's lives. A symbol like this needs to be as good as you can possibly get it, because it means so much to the person who trusts you with that task. Make me this thing that means this much, that I can do this, this key almost for the next part of their lives. This was so much more special because this was my son's ring. Until next time, thanks for watching this video, and thanks for being a part of the whole thing as well. I really appreciate it. You guys are just the best. See you next time. I wanted to say week. You see that?
I know, we'll get there.
We'll get there again.
Get there.
Okay, that's as much as I can get now to collapse.